Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us for this latest A-List webinar. My name is Sam, and I'm the Client Service Director for A-List Education. I'm joined by my fantastic colleague Mark today, who's one of our very, very experienced and, dare I say, best advisors that we have working with us at A-List. And we're really glad that you've joined us. I know it's a roasting day in London, and we've got the football to look forward to later today, but we're really glad that you took your time out to join us today, and we're going to be discussing the sort of the various elements of the early decision application process in the United States and how it can work for you, how it can work in your favor. Things to bear in mind when applying to schools via early decision. And we're going to talk a little bit about sort of how this works, what to bear in mind. Mark is going to be leading this process and just sort of talking you through how he works with students to achieve these outcomes when we look at early decision applications. We will have some Q&A function available throughout the call. So what I would request is if you do have a question that you'd like to ask Mark or myself, please pop it in the Q&A section. We'll have plenty of time at the end of the webinar once we've gone through our presentation to cover questions. So please feel free to utilize that function throughout the call. If you'd like to have a question answered, then we'd be happy to do so once we've finished the presentation. But without further ado, I'm going to be driving the presentation in the background. I'm going to hand over to my fantastic colleague, Mark, who's going to be guiding you today.
Well, thanks, Sam, and thank you all for joining me and us today. Sorry it's roasting where you are. I'm based in Florida. It's always roasting here. It is, I don't know what it is in Celsius, but it's 94 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's only, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Our humidity is probably 100%. But we do have much more air conditioning. So thanks for joining us on this hot day. Try to keep it relatively quick and relatively easy so you can get ready for your football match against Ghana. It is crazy over here in the States with World Cup fever, which is great to see. The Scotland took over the city of Boston. I think France has taken over the city of Boston now for their next round. So I pity the teams that have to play in Miami because it's terribly hot. But let's get on to what we're here for. Um, Nothing is easy in the United States. And applying to university is not easy as well. We have made it as complex and nuanced as possible, which is wonderful because it keeps people like Sam and I employed. But it does make applying to school more than just an application. So we have to consider what method of application we're going to use. And that's what we're going to talk about today, the early strategy. So we can go to the next slide, Sam. And so we have a multitude of options. We can actually skip this one. It's a nice picture, but we can skip this slide. We have a multitude of options. So most of you will be applying to schools if it's not the University of California school. So if you're not applying to, let's say, UCLA or UC Berkeley, they have their own application and their own application deadline. It's a simpler process there. It's one application that goes to any of the University of California schools. And the application deadline is you have between November 1st and November 30th to submit it. That's it. And you find out in March. Much simpler process of applying, but a different application. For most of our other schools, students will be using something called the Common Application, if you're not familiar with it, which is common to, as I said, most of the schools that anyone here in the States is thinking of. There's a few schools that don't use it. MIT, Caltech, used to be Georgetown, but they're now back on the Common Application. One application that is used to allow you to apply to up to, hundreds and hundreds of colleges. But there are different methods of applying with the same application. We have an early decision method. We have something called early action. We have something to make it even more complicated called restricted early action or single choice early action. which is the most complicated of them all, but has the fewest amount of schools that offer it. And then every school, of course, has regular decision, which is the last sort of the final deadline of when you can apply. And there's one that's missing that we should have put on there that is called rolling admission. And a lot of schools just allow you to apply, and then 3 or 4 weeks later, you'll find out your decision. Not many of you will be applying to schools that have rolling decision, but there are schools that have it. Here in Florida, for instance, Florida Institute of Technology, a very popular school, has rolling admissions where you apply, 3 or 4 weeks later you find out. But for the most of you, you'll be using the common application. It'll be used to apply to most of your schools, and you'll be having to pick one of these methods of applying. We can go to the next one, Sam. Um, each of them have different deadlines, although some of the deadlines are concurrent. Each of them have different notification timelines when you'll find out. Each of the methods has a different commitment requirement. For instance, how restrictive is it, basically? And each has limited to no ability to apply to other institutions. So you might find yourself wanting to apply early because it has a significant help to you to get in, but it stops you from applying to some other schools. And that's what we'll go over so you can then pick the best method for you. We can go to the next one, Sam. Get into it. Early decision. Early decision is probably the most discussed option with our clients and our students. Why? Because it's binding. If you apply early decision, it binds you to that school if you get in, not just in the United States, but around the globe. So if you apply to a school early decision and you get in, you have to go to that university. There are ways to release yourself from early decision, but I would say 95% of the students that receive an early decision offer are bound to that offer. You apply usually sometime between November 1st and November 15th is the deadline to apply. The nice thing is you hear very quickly, usually before Christmas and the New Year holiday, that you have either been admitted, deferred to a later admission plan, or rejected. Some of the key features of early decision. It's not a decision you should make lightly. And because of that, the student has to sign a certain form, the parents have to sign off on it, and your school has to sign off on you being able to apply to that one school early decision. The other key feature that we talked about, obviously, if you're admitted and you may have applied to, 10 or 12 other schools by then, not just here, but across the globe, you would have to call them, write them, do whatever you do to withdraw that application. Will it provide an admissions advantage? Yes, it will. And we'll talk more about that later. That's why it's become very popular. I should let you know that the early decision option is currently in the US court system to decide whether it is legal or not to ask a 17-year-old student to commit to a university before they are 18, before they have seen what other schools have offered and to see how much it's going to really cost financially. So there is some traction that early decision within a few years might be something that's not going to be there, but I would not count on it. I would think early decision will last, and it will certainly last, for the next few years, and will be an option that many schools use. There is also something called early decision 2. So some schools have 2 early decision deadlines. So let's say you apply to one and you don't get in, you can apply to another school for early decision 2 because the deadline is usually after you've heard from the first one. Again, we try to keep it confusing. But the biggest thing with early decision is it's your top choice. You're bound to go to that school. You apply early, you find out early. I think we can go to the next one, Sam. We can talk. Who's it best for? Early decision is really best. And this is something. So when I talk to my students, they know I talk about early decision. And usually what I say is, if this is the school that you would go to, regardless of what any other school would say. If you would go to this school, let's say over Princeton, over Stanford, over Oxford, over LSE, over Bocconi, over the University of Toronto. If this is your first choice, you've always dreamed of going to this school, then it's a good choice. If you think you can afford it, regardless of how much aid they might be able to offer you. If your parents say, yes, we can afford for you to go to Harvard, go ahead and apply. Or actually, let's not use Harvard, let's use Columbia. You can go there, we can afford it. Go early decision if it helps you get in. Yes. If you're comfortable making that kind of commitment now, between now and November 1st, then I would say yes. The other time it comes into play, it's not on here, but based on what I do largely for A-List, many times when athletes are being recruited, a coach will ask that athlete, I will commit to you if you commit to our school. And the way you do that is by applying early decision. So many times that's what an athlete sometimes is looking for. They love the school. The coach has said, I love you. I'm going to give you a good scholarship. I can guarantee you'll get in, but you have to apply early decision. So that's another time where early decision comes in handy. But if you're not a recruited student athlete, you have to consider all the other things. Is this the school I would go to? No matter what else anybody said, can I afford it? No matter how much they might offer me. And, is the family committed as much as I am? If it's a good family decision and everyone's behind you doing this and your school's behind you doing this, then sometimes I would say trigger the early decision button. We can go to the next one, Sam. Thanks. Then there's early action. Early action is a really nice, simplified plan. And most schools, many are schools, actually fewer schools are doing it now than they used to, but offer something called early action, which is basically you're excited to apply, you want to find out early, you're happy with your grades, you're happy with your predicted A levels or IB scores, you're happy with your SAT or ACT score, and you say, hey, I just want to get my application in and find out as early as I can. I don't want to wait till March. And that's what early action. There's no binding. You can apply to any amount of schools you want to. The difference is you apply early, you find out early. And the application results come to you usually by the new year, usually around the same time as early decision, sometimes a little bit later. There's no obligation to enroll. You can apply to many EA schools, and most of my students apply to as many that will allow them to. Does it give you some advantage to getting in? Sure, because it shows your interest in going to that school. But I would say if you're not happy with your SAT scores, or if you're really waiting for some extra thing to happen, some extra commitment you've made to a charity organization or to a team, what have you, I would not apply early unless everything you have on paper is ready to be reviewed. Your A levels, your IBs, your GCSEs are lined up to the way to get in. Nothing you need to change on those. Then you can apply early. It sure makes for a nicer Christmas or Hanukkah or New Year, knowing that you've received many offers and you can kind of rest easy until you have to make a decision. But it's not binding. We can go to the next one, Sam. Who's it best for? Well, it's best for students who want that early feedback. And quite honestly, I'll be honest with you, I ask all of my students to have their applications queued up, done and completed by November 1st so that they can commit to either early action, early decision, or what we're going to talk about next, restricted early action. Even if you change your plans, at least the application's queued up, you're done, you've written all your essays, you've written everything they need, you filled out the form, you have your letters of recommendation. Doesn't mean you have to hit the submit button, but it's queued up. So it's good for the early planner. It's good for anyone that's working with me or probably anyone that we work with at A-List. We like to be our students have the best advantage as possible. It gives you more time to plan and look at the colleges you get into because you're here early. So then you can be the hunted instead of the hunter and start thinking of which college now you want to go into. Our goal is, for you to get into more than one college. And again, often for someone like a student athlete, a coach might ask you to apply early action. If they don't have early decision, they might ask you to apply early action. So this shows your commitment to the school, but it's not binding. So if you get into a school with plain early action, you do not have to fear that you have to go to that school. You can be looking at applications to all sorts of other schools. Now we get, I like that our slide is red because restricted early action is a very limited, very unique program. It's called early action because you find out early and it's not binding, but it's called restrictive because there are restrictions. The nice thing is there's not a whole lot of schools that have restricted early action. I think three schools in the Ivy League offer it: Harvard, Yale, and Princeton. Stanford offers it. I think Duke used to offer it. They don't anymore. So there's a few schools that offer it, but Notre Dame offers a restricted early action. That's about it. But what it is basically you apply early. It's non-binding. You usually apply by November 1st. You find out in the middle of December. It doesn't bind you to go to any other school, but it does stop you from applying to any other private U.S. institution early. So if you were to say, I want to apply to Harvard, and Harvard has restricted early action, you can't apply to any other private school. The rest of the Ivy League, Stanford, Duke, those are all private schools. You would not be able to apply to them until regular decision. So, um, yeah, there's no obligation to enroll, but it kind of is very restrictive in many ways. Now, the advantage of it over early decision is it does allow you to apply to public universities early or whenever, even if you're applying restrictive. So if you're an engineering student and you think you want to go to um, Princeton and you apply restricted early action, you can't apply to Harvard and you can't apply to Yale or Dartmouth or any of those because they're private. But you could apply to Georgia Institute of Technology. You could apply to Purdue. You could apply to UC Berkeley because they are great engineering schools, but they're public universities. So that's where it's a great option for students where some of your top choices are going to be public universities like the ones I just mentioned. University of Michigan, University of Texas. I'm trying to think of the top public universities. University of Florida, University of Illinois, UCLA, UC Berkeley. Those are all public universities. Georgia Tech, Purdue, like I mentioned. Those are all public universities. So you can apply to Harvard, restricted early action, and to all those other schools early, not early decision, but early action as much as you want. But you can't apply to any other private schools. Why do they do that? Well, it was started in the Ivy League. I think we can go to the next slide, Sam. I'm sorry. Um, it started in the Ivy League. Stanford joined on. Stanford would be in the Ivy League if they were on the East Coast. Um, it really, what it does is show someplace like Harvard, hey, you really want to come here and you're not going to apply to any other Ivy League schools early. But they don't want to bind you to come there just in case you realize, it's a little bit more compassionate in some ways than early decision. I ask again my students if they're going to, if one of these schools, those four schools that are listed there, and maybe adding on Notre Dame, if one of those five schools are really are your top choice, no matter what else ever happens, then apply to them. If you're an athlete, and if a coach at those schools wants you, they're going to ask you to apply restricted early action. And that's, their commitment to you and your commitment to them. That's a whole different thing. But for the typical student who's not a recruited student athlete, you should look at restricted early action almost like early decision. I would say, who does it benefit most? It benefits very competitive students with strong GCSEs, amazing um, predicted grades, SAT of like 1500 already in the bank, already done and dusted. If that's you and you think going and you want to show Harvard or Yale that it's your first choice, then you can apply restricted early action. But it does hurt you if you don't get in. And a lot of restricted early actions are deferred to the regular pool. So they get a decision that's of, in limbo. You're in limbo. You're not accepted, you're not rejected, you're deferred. So I would go about it case by case. To me, the biggest advantage to restricted early action is for students in very STEM related areas like engineering, AI, robotics, physics, astronomy, where many of our public universities are also being considered as your top choices, and therefore you can apply to them. It takes the onus off of you if you're also looking at UCLA and Berkeley and Michigan and Texas and Florida, Purdue, Florida State, whatever it might be. You can apply to those public universities. So when we develop our list with our students, we're very quick to make sure they know which ones are private, which ones are public. So we can go on from that, I think, Sam. Regular decision. This used to be the big decision deadline. January used to be, it's usually around January 1st to January 15th. It's the sort of the final deadline of when you can get your application in. It's the most competitive one because all those students who didn't apply early somewhere all have to apply. It's the biggest pool of students. It is, I would say, most of my students never even see the regular decision deadline. They're either doing early action or restricted early decision, early action or early decision. But they have to have applications ready for regular decision just in case they don't get into the early action or early decision schools or early of their liking. So just because the deadline's January 1st doesn't mean I ask them to wait till January 1st to do their application. Again, try to queue them all up by the November 1st deadline to be as nimble as possible. You won't hear usually until March or April, and then you'll have about a month or so to turn around and decide which school you want to go to. It's non-binding. There's no bindingness to regular decision. You can apply to as many schools as you want in the States and around the world. For a student who needs more time to increase their SAT score, or there was a problem with their A levels and there's new scores coming in, or they're about to do some really unique um, involvement outside of school, um, building homes in a poor country or working for another charity that's really going to enhance their application. Sometimes it's best to wait and apply regular decision because it gives you more time to take the SAT, more time to increase your profile, more time to get a great letter of recommendation. So those to me are the key features of regular decision. If it were up to me, if I were king of the world, let alone the United States, and if I were king of the world, I would only have one decision deadline. That this is it. But I'm not, and we'll get into why I'm not king of the world very soon. Next slide, man. The benefits of regular decision, obviously, it's the most flexible. There's no bindingness. There's a later deadline that gives you more time to prepare your applications, to get financial aid offers from the schools, more time to do your testing and activities, to work on your essays. If you're a procrastinator, that's probably not working with one of our A-list advisors. You might end up applying regular decision. But if you're a motivated student who's being helped to be motivated by a good college advisor, you might apply early decision, but your application will be ready to go in early just in case. But it does for many students, and I have told them to do regular decision because they're just on the cusp of really increasing their SAT score, and they really need that to increase their profile. or they're just about to embark on a tremendous um, leadership role. And if once they're in that, it would be great to be able to put that on their application. So, in a few cases, yes, I ask them to wait to regular decision. Again, if you're applying to any of the University of California schools or the California State University schools, there is no early action, early decision. There's only a regular decision deadline of November 30th. That's when all the applications are due. And then you'll find out in March, just like you would under regular decision. So we can go to the next slide, Sam. So why choose each? I think we've talked a little bit about it. Early decision, strategically, if this is your clear first choice, for a lot of students of mine, sometimes it's because it's in the family tradition. My father went to Penn, my mother went to Penn, my grandmother went to Penn. I'm applying early to Penn. Okay. So if it's a clear first choice, then great, do early decision. If you know that you would go there over any other university, if you don't care that it costs $90,000 to $100,000 a year, then and your application is ready, your scores are ready, you've got a great SAT, you've got great GCSEs, or a coach has told you this is what you need to do, then early decision is your best strategic choice. Early action is great if you just are highly motivated, you are ready to apply, you're ready to work on your essays early, you've got great SAT scores, you don't want to take the SAT again, you don't want to work past the new year on stuff you're too involved in prepping for your A levels, then definitely do early action. I don't see any reason not to apply early action to any school that offers it if you can do it, if it's not restricted. And it keeps, it's not binding, it keeps all of your options open. Restricted early action, I think, is great if you're targeted and you're targeting one of those 5 or 6 schools that are worth applying to restricted early action. I mean, those are really good schools, okay? And if you're ready to go to them, if they had offered early decision, you would have done it. Don't, so you right here. I think the other reason to apply restricted early action, if you're in one of those unique STEM-like programs where you can apply to public schools that are on your list because they're not restricted. So that would include, students in engineering, students in robotics and AI, in computer science, students in music, because, a school like Florida State or Indiana, which have tremendous music, some of the best music programs are public universities. Theater, the arts, some of those, I would say restricted early action is pretty good because you're not as restricted as a student that wants to study business or finance or accounting or something like that. So I think that's the advantage of restricted early action, and that it's not binding. You don't have to get in even if you don't have to go even if you do get in. And I think you choose regular decision. One, if you need more time to make your profile look better, that's the biggest reason. The more time to take the SAT, maybe you've just thought about applying to the United States and your year 13 is rising and you haven't even prepped for the SAT yet. Or a regular decision might be the best option for you. If you need to be able to compare financial cost to come to the States versus staying at home, then I think waiting to regular decision gives you more time to see what kind of aid package our schools might be offering you. But if aid's not an issue, if your academics are all set to go, then any of the early options are probably better for you. And if you're working with us, again, beating a dead horse, your applications, because I know some of my clients are there, your applications will be ready by November 1st. The biggest question, Sam, right, that we get, if we go to the next slide, the biggest question we always get is, does it help me get in by applying early? That is usually the reason most students want to know. It's hey, if it helps me get into the school, I'll apply early. Early decision is the biggest advantage to getting in, usually a 2 to 3 times greater admissions rate early decision than regular decision. So if you're ready to commit, if you're ready to apply, if you've done the work you need to do, have the grades you want, know that you fit the profile, Your advisor agrees, your parents agree, the school agrees. Applying early decision gives you a huge advantage over any other application method. But it only gives you an advantage if you're the kind of candidate that they're looking for. And it's the kind of school you want to go to. And you're ready to commit to it, not just where you want to go, but how much it's going to cost. It's most beneficial then if for a very highly academic school and it's in your blood. Like you've got to go to that school. And there are some people that just know that it's the right choice. And when we go through the process, um, we can tell as advisors that this is the school you love. This is and if we think early decision is the best way to go, we will be the first person to say this is the method to go. The other reason it's an advantage, obviously, is if you're an athlete, sometimes even a musician or a theater person, where the theater director or the music director or the coach says, "Hey, I've checked with admissions. I can get you into the school, but only if you apply early decision." So it's beneficial. Next one, Sam. Early action. Is it helpful? Yes. Um, why is early decision, I should go back to that. Why is early decision helpful? The schools that offer early decision often are looking not so much to judge themselves or be judged by how many students they say yes or no to, right? Brown University knows it can say yes to 95% of the students that apply. And if that 5% were to disappear, they could dip into their application pool and find another 5% that looked just like them. Okay. What they're looking for is increasing what in admissions world is called yield. How many students they say yes back to them. So early decision, you're bound to say yes back to them. If you think of it, I know this is probably not politically correct, but if you think of it like dating, schools do not want to ask you out if you're going to say no. Okay? Early decision means you're going to say yes. Early action means you're probably going to say yes. You seem really interested. You took a leap to do it early to our school. Well, maybe we'll ask you out. So it does help a little bit. And that's really the advantage to early decision is they know you're coming, right? Harvard and Yale and some of these schools have like a 90% yield rate. So you get into Stanford, it's very few students don't go once they get in. But a lot of schools that offer early decision are trying to get yield rate higher. And that's so here's an example. The University of Florida, which is one of our top public universities, just decided to offer early decision. The only state university in Florida that does that. Why did they do that? Because they want their yield rate to go from 30% to 50 or 60%. They want more of the students they say yes to say yes back to them. If you apply early decision, you have to. If you apply early action, you're leaning that way. So they do feel pretty positive about you. It's great for the student who really has interest in that school, who really has everything ready to go, probably is a little concerned about the finance and or about making that kind of a binding commitment. But you're pretty sure that, man, if I could get into the University of Miami, I would probably go there. And so I'm going to early action, not early decision. Does it help? A little bit. It's not that yield builder that early decision is, where you have to go, therefore their yield goes up. We can go to the finals. One, Sam. Regular decision, early action, restricted early action, and early decision put in the same category as far as advantages go. Early action, a little bit of an advantage. Okay. Not much. Shows you want to go to school there. Yeah, it's a good idea. You're a good student. You work early. You're not a procrastinator. You're, goal oriented. You got your application in early. You did really well in school. Um, can you work early action more to your advantage? Yes, by going to visit the school, reaching out to faculty and staff at the school and asking them about research and, talking to people at the school and showing that it's your first choice, but not the same kind of advantage that restricted early action and certainly early decision do, but some advantage, yes. And finally, regular decision. Regular decision, there's no There's no advantage to applying regular decision to the school. To you, the advantage would be improving your profile. I think that's the only reason to wait on regular decision is if you want to get your scores up on your SAT, you want to get more engaged in something outside of school, something really impactful, or your application is just not strong enough in November. We should just take more time. I'd rather see you apply regular decision with a strong application than early action with a mediocre application. So oftentimes with some of my students, I've said, I just don't think your essay is strong enough. I don't think your activities list is strong enough. I don't think your supplements are strong enough. I'd rather see you take more time and get into a more competitive pool, but have a more competitive application. And unfortunately, that does kind of deter you. It doesn't give you any advantage except to yourself, making yourself a better looking student. So early decision, to summarize, I think is the best option to help you get in or to help you get into a school, but you've got to be a candidate they want, and it's got to be at a school you would go to above anywhere else in the world. Oxford, Cambridge, London School of Economics. You'd rather go to Brown, or you'd rather go to Columbia, or you'd rather go to Cornell over those schools, then apply early decision. If you're not sure, then restricted early action is a little bit better option for you because it does not bind you. And that's why some schools like Harvard and Yale and Princeton and Stanford offer that. That's a little bit more compassionate. And especially if you know you can still apply to those public universities. Regular early action, great for the highly motivated, highly ready student who does not need to improve their profile. Let's get this out of the way. Let's get your application in, get your results early, gives you time to really research which one you want to go to, and time to really focus on your I-grade level that are coming up in the spring. And regular decision, I think, is the option if you need to improve your profile. If you've started late, haven't had a chance to take an SAT until September or November, and you need two or three options, and you don't have haven't done any revision for it, then regular decision might be your best option. So, Sam, what did I forget?
Thank you so much, Mark. Really, really interesting, and I think I personally learned quite a lot from this. And it's always good to sort of go through the various mechanisms of early decision and how our clients can take advantage of that. So, thank you so much for delivering what I thought was a really informative session. We're now going to move on to Q&A. So, if you just bear with me, I'm just going to see the questions that we have coming in,
Sure.
and then we'll sort of go through them together. Um, so, first question I have is from Tulin, and Tulin is asking us, could we discuss requirements for the IBCP? Now, this is the career program IB. Now, I suspect
Right.
that the answer is really that it's reviewed on a holistic basis, but
Yeah.
perhaps Mark, if you could give your comments as well.
I would like to, but I would say the same as Sam. It's a holistic review. I don't know enough about it to put you to answer that, but I'd be glad to do some research, get it back to Sam if he can forward it on to you. That would be great. It's something I've never had to work with any of my students, but I know it exists, but I'm not sure what how best to advise you on that.
I think the key with that is that you'll have IB diploma subjects, at least two within that career
Yeah,
program, and those are really the key metrics for US
yeah.
admissions. I think that the career program itself is not really evaluated in the same way, and that it's you're reviewed just like everybody else in a holistic way.
Right. What it will do is it'll improve what we when we convert your IB scores to what we would consider a GPA. It would weight those two IB subjects, but it wouldn't weight them at the level of an IB diploma would, for sure. I don't know if it would be something that would be well received by our most elite universities, but other than that, if you don't already know this, being in the British pattern system, being in a British school, if that's where you are, or an international school for many of you, is a much more it is also weighted highly by our admissions office because they know the work that goes into your day compared to a US school is uh, more complex and more compelling than what some of our students have to do. My son was an IB student. He went to school at 7:30 in the morning, was done at 1:30 in the afternoon. Okay. 5 days a week, didn't have GCSEs, didn't have predicteds. He just took his IB diploma, and that was test, and that was his IB. I mean, he grades every year, and he had school and tests and testing, but not at the level that goes through what you guys are going through. So um, don't sell yourself short. You can apply to great schools, and any IB level course that you take will be seen as one of the best courses you can take in the world. So it will be weighted, but it won't be weighted as highly as a diploma would be, or that track of study would be.
Great, thanks, Mark. Let's cover some of the other questions. So I've got one from Janine, who's one of our current clients. What percentage of applicants get in at early action?
Early action, I would say, is it. There is no set percentage. It is better than regular decision. You have a better chance of getting in for two reasons. One, well, for a few reasons. The biggest reason is because it shows your interest in that school. The schools want students that, made their first choice, want to walk around the campus and see everyone wearing their gear, not thinking about transferring, and, being happy that they're at their top choice school. So there is that advantage that it shows the school that. But I think if you're going to apply early action, you should really try to follow it up with more. And that more being visiting the school, going on the tour and information session, trying to meet someone in the admissions office. My students, I ask them to potentially write some faculty and staff that they see that look doing some really interesting research, and let them know how interesting it is, and love to have a conversation with them about it, with the hope that they'll then let the admissions office know. Plus, I think without trying, the admissions offices tend to be early weighted. Like if they tend to accept more students in the early round than they do later, because they're excited to see a good, strong application. They don't know what's coming after that. By the time you get to regular decision, they know all the applicants. The early applicants, they don't get 10,000 applicants or 40,000 applicants. So they have to say, this student's really good, shows that she really wants to go here. I think, let's say yes, because I don't know what's coming in January. So I do think there's still an advantage to early action. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Next question is from Monica, and Monica asks, what are the relative acceptance rate advantages for an Ivy League school with REA versus EA?
It's well, the Ivy League schools either offer early action or early decision or regular decision. There's no early action at any of the Ivy League schools. It's either restricted or it's or binding or regular. The schools that offer early decision, I would say, gives you a 1.5 to 3 times better chance of getting in. So let's say maybe a 10, 15% chance of getting in compared to regular decision or overall rate of 4 or 5%. It's ridiculous right now what their acceptance rates are. But pretty much the Ivy League, you're looking at 5 to 7% acceptance rates. You have to weigh that too. Who's in that 5 to 7%? Well, recruited student athletes, students who have legacy, parents and grandparents and whatever went to that school. Some famous kids that want to go there. I don't think Barack Obama's kids had to worry about where they were getting in. Jodie Foster didn't have to worry about getting into Brown. So the real acceptance rate for a regular student, probably around 4 or 5%. But if you apply early decision, particularly after that school, I think you're looking more at 10 to 15%.
Great,
Maybe higher. It's at non-Ivy League schools even higher, much higher. Yeah.
thanks, Mark. And this next question probably ties in a little bit about what you covered at the end there, but Melissa, who's another one of our clients, asks, can sports and legacy early decision bring acceptance rates down enough to not make ED worth doing if you are neither one of those?
Not in ED, but in regular decision, yeah. I mean, there aren't that many athletes, okay, that are recruited each year. It's not this huge number of students. And legacy is a lot of schools are doing away with legacy admissions right now. So I don't think that's going to continue to be an advantage, which, I can understand. But ED uh, is still going to help you as a, let's say, a regular student. ED is still going to help you. I still believe whether it's early decision, and like I said before, restricted early, whichever way you apply, you have to do more than just apply. I do believe you have to show that school that that's your number one choice. Part of that to me is visiting, doing, getting, you're going to get, once you've applied, you're going to get links to from the school for all sorts of webinars and seminars. Go to them. Even if you're not that interested, go sign up, coming, go to it, be there, ask questions, show them you want to go because that's who they're going to say yes to. Again, our best schools, the schools that most of our students apply to coming out of Europe, um, they want to judge themselves again based on their yield rate, not their acceptance rate. They know they're going to say no to most of the applicants, but they want to say yes to students that really, really want to go there. And early decision binds you to go there, so that helps. But they still want you to really, really go there. So that's why restricted early action helps as well.
Lovely. Thank you, Mark. We've got one last question. So, just sort of final call. If anybody does have any questions that they would like to ask, now is the time. But for now, this is our final question from one of our attendees. In some schools, A levels are less highly regarded than an IB. Um, and I just sort of I'm going to cover their question in a way that I think is useful for you to understand, Mark, is just how does that translate into grade point average? I presume that they're asking sort of if you translating A levels and IB programs side by side, is there an advantage in one or the other when it comes to GPA?
I don't think so at all. I think the A levels for your GCSEs show a breadth of knowledge. Your A levels show a depth of knowledge, critical thinking, the ability to write and do that. There is, to me, very little difference in admissions office between A levels or IB. The IB, and they're also externally validated. In other words, an A level at one school exam is the same as the A level exam at another school. So you're sort of validated just like the IB is. I don't think there's a difference. I think I think our schools are used to IB a little bit more than A levels because we have it here in the States. So some schools just understand it a little bit better. So they understand the scoring system and stuff. But at our top schools, I personally like the A levels, even though my son was an IB student. If he had a choice to do A levels and GCSEs, I would have picked that over A level over IB, just because the depth of knowledge you have coming in about something is tremendous. So I don't think it's an advantage at all. I would say both levels in IB are advantage to the typical American system for sure. It's definitely weighted in their minds and how they view students. The other advantage all of you have right now is that our international applications here in the States are down, 15 to 20% down. That's not something the schools want. They want to have their role, their diversity of where people come from and backgrounds they have. So international applicants right now do have an advantage over maybe 3 or 4 years ago when things were different in the States. But yeah, our universities want international students. We thrive on having students that come from backgrounds that are different, come from education systems that are different to share with our students here in the States. That's what our diversity is all about. It's not just about ethnicity. It's about difference of thought, difference of culture, difference of experiences. And that downside has been harmful. Some schools like Harvard included, have gone out recruiting students like they've never done in years. So you're at a good time right now to be applying to the States with the right help and the right ability to put together a strong application. An international student has a leg up on where they were than years ago, and being in the A level or IB doesn't matter. They're both phenomenal systems. Yeah.
Just have a few more questions coming through, Mark, so
Sure.
we'll just cover those off quickly. So Melissa asks, is it beneficial for a student to apply ED if they may have a weakness in part of their application, for instance, like a GPA, knowing
No.
this is where they want to go and have the financial means?
I still think you need to have the app. You know, if you have to have the the benchmarks the school is looking for. If your GPA is significantly lower than their benchmark GPA, I would. There's nothing you can do about it, right? But the one thing you will happen is you'll get your predicted grades will help. That's a tough decision. I would talk to, if you have an advisor who knows you and knows how strong your application is, I would still apply early decision. If you can put together a real compelling application, our applications give you opportunities to talk about why there might be some hiccups in your academic record, which I think is really helpful. I think it would be helpful if you really know it's your top school and everything else is in line and your GPA is just a little bit off, and but your predicted scores are, yeah, that's a tough call. That's something to talk over individually, but I would say depends on where that GPA is and depending on the school you're applying to. For instance, there are schools I would say, and I know I'm blabbering on, Sam, I'm sorry. In American schools, I think you have to keep in mind that at least 40% of what they're looking at is not academic. So if you're applying ED and you have a really strong non-academic profile, a lot of volunteer work, a lot of leadership work, some good academic stuff that you've done outside of school, an extra class that you took, or a pre-college program that you went to, then we look at that almost at a 50-50 with your academics. And there are some schools, especially on our West Coast in California, the Claremont colleges, others that at least 50% of what they judge you on is not academic. So I would say if the hole in your application is your GPA versus I didn't do much out of school, I would say fix that part and apply regular decision. If it's a GPA and you're off by a little bit and you can explain it and you go to a really good school and your A levels and SAT your GPA is down maybe because when you were 15 and your GCSEs are a little lower than they could have been, I think that it's still worth applying early decision. That was a
Okay, we just
long
have
answer. Sorry.
that's okay. We've got one final question, and then I think we have to draw the webinar to a close. So if we didn't get round to everybody, we will be following up after this session's been completed. I guess this final question from Cecilia is really a technicality. Does a student with a US passport but raised in Europe count as international? I'm
Yes.
guessing yes, it would be yes.
Yes. Yeah. It's where you go to school. So if you're an American citizen but you go to school in Europe, you're an international student. Will it make it easier? Once you're accepted, it makes it easier because you don't need a visa. So there's some hoops you don't have to jump through to get your visa, and time you don't have to take doing that. But as an applicant, you'll be an international student. Um, but they'll know you don't have to do things like take an English exam and stuff like that. So depending on where you go to school, but anyone that, even if you're a U.S. citizen, if you go to an international school, you're an international student.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. We do have to draw it to a close now. So if we haven't got round to everybody, we will certainly do so after the webinar's been completed and we'll be in touch with you. One final thing I will just make you aware of, we have some QR codes available on the screen. You can use these to either book a consultation with myself. So that first QR code is to book a free of charge 20-minute consultation with a member of the client service team. That will likely either be myself or one of my colleagues. And we also have a 50% off full private consultation promotion running in June. So you can scan the QR code if you're interested in working potentially with an advisor like Mark or like one of our colleagues, and you'd like a detailed review session over the course of an hour to review your students' suitability for a variety of programs to get real constructive feedback on the strength of an application, then this is an excellent session to be able to do that and to have a really crystal clear timeline in place of the work that needs to be done to make that application as competitive as possible. So please feel free to take advantage of that. We would love to speak with you further. And for any of the attendees on the call, including our clients, if you'd like to get in touch with me, or if there's anything that you'd like to discuss off the back of this webinar, we'll be following up with each and every one of our attendees after we've completed today. So all that remains for me to say is thank you so much to Mark for what I think has been a
Thank
really
you. No,
informative
thank you.
session.
Thank you for having me. Go
Thank
England.
you all. Thank you all for joining us, and we will see you again for our next webinar, which I think is going to be next month, and we'll be happy to see you there for that next one. So take care, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.